You know those pictures you get, those puzzles, where you see the two images side by side, they're identical, but somewhere within them are differences, 10 differences, and it says below, circle the 10 differences that you can spot. My daughter absolutely loves them. Spends hours at them, just circling away all the little differences that she can find. Well, this is our version of that game. Same location, same car. Can you spot the differences in this week's road test review? Well, kudos to you if you've noticed that I'm wearing a different shirt. But here's something for you. This isn't the same car. Might be the same colour. You might look like the same car, but it isn't the same car as last week. This isn't a Toyota BZ4X, because this car wears a Subaru badge. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Subaru Solterra. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go on to this week's road test review, which is different than last week's, trust me, of the new Subaru Solterra, please remember to make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because then you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. After you've watched the video, if you enjoy it, make sure you do give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments down below as well. Let us know your thoughts on the cars that we review, such as the new Solterra, and of course on the channel as a whole. Now, depending on your age and how you grew up, may depend on how you view the brand of Subaru. If you kind of grew up in the sort of like the 90s, then anything that's not painted sort of like blue with gold wheels and 3 number 5s down the side of it that's been thrown down a forest track won't really feel like a Subaru to you, because of course the brand was synonymous with rallying the WRC championship with Colin McRae and Richard Burns at the helm. But for those of us a little bit older, when we grew up in the kind of countryside like we are here, a Subaru was a very different type of car. You see, where I grew up, the local farmers didn't drive around in Land Rovers, they drove around in Subaru Brat pickups, and the landed gentry surrounding us all had sort of like Series L wagons or Outbacks, because they knew they would just go on forever. And of course they may think that they have money, but actually they need to spend more money fixing the roof on the manor house than they do buying a new car. So of course a Subaru that can be held together with bits of straw and baling twine was the perfect car for them, because it would just go on forever. But over the past few years, the brand seems to, well, certainly in my mind, kind of lost its way a little bit. It's not quite got the same sort of impact that it once had. I mean, the Impreza Turbo and the WRX are but faded memories, certainly here in the UK. And actually, if I'm being honest with you, I genuinely had to look up on the website the other day to find out what cars Subaru currently sells in the UK, such as the sort of like the diminishment of the brand, certainly in my eyes. Well, it hopes to change it with this, the Solterra. Now, it is of course based on the Toyota BZ4X. There's more to it than just a couple of badges, which we'll obviously cover across in the road test review. And it is worthwhile doing a separate road test on the Subaru to the Toyota, as we'll see later on. But to the uninitiated, it is effectively just a BZX. They're technical partners, Toyota and Subaru, much like they were with their sports car. So the BRZ and the GT86, and of course the new Toyota GR86 and the new BRZ, which strangely enough we don't get in the UK either. But do we deserve the Solterra? And does it deserve your consideration over the BZ4X? But before we get started, let's take a quick snapshot at what the Subaru Solterra actually is. Well, it's part of a technical partnership with Toyota, and the Solterra is Subaru's first all-electric car, and like the BZ4X cousin, it is of course a mid-size crossover SUV. And like the Toyota, it comes only in one battery size, but you can only get the Subaru with the dual motor all-wheel drive system. There isn't a single motor version available like there is in the Toyota. And because it only comes with the dual motor setup, the range is between 257 and 289 miles, depending on the trim level you specify. But if they are the same car, how do you choose between them? And should you choose one over the other? Well, the only way we're going to find that out is by putting it through the road test, their actual car buyers are trusting to deliver all the facts and deliver a true verdict when it comes to new electric vehicles on sale today. And that is, of course, well, it's the AutoEV one, isn't it? Now, at 452 litres, it is exactly the same size as the Toyota, as you'd expect, which isn't the best in its class, but it's certainly far from the worst. I mean, it's bigger than the Ford Mustang Mach-E, although it is much smaller than things like the Volkswagen ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq and Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6. And that's before we mention the Tesla Model Y. But still, it should be enough for most people, depending obviously on what you want to carry. I mean, obviously if you're sort of like a countryside person that would normally buy a Subaru, you'll want to get your welly bag in there, which obviously you can, and your rucksack. But as you can see, whilst I still don't have my fourth suitcase back, 4 suitcases will fit with ease, without any problems at all. And when you take them out, what you can see is you've got a nice open space that's a decent shape. So again, as I say, if you're carrying things like, you know, you can carry things like a couple of Purdy shotguns in there, or a gun dog or whatever, there's a good size of space in there, and I say it's nice and squared off. The other nice thing is this flat load bay in the area here, so you're not dropping things down into the well and having to lift them back out over it. The seats do fold 60-40, like they do again in the Toyota, and when you do fold them flat, they do fold fairly flat, in fairness, so you get quite a nice sort of like load bay through. There's not too much of a ramp up there. Underfloor storage is good, cable storage is fine, so you get a granny charger in there and your Type 2 cable in there as well. And again, like the Toyota, you can actually take the parcel shelf out, and that will, if I do it correctly this time, store underneath there, so you don't have to leave it at home. So again, whilst it's not the biggest, it is still practical. Now, rear seat space. Well, again, exactly the same, which is fine, but there is a couple of differences back here. Now, we'll go on to trims and specifications a little bit later, but in the Subaru, this is the touring model, which gives it this glass panoramic roof. So whilst the headroom is still the same where I'm sitting here, because you're kind of behind it, if you're taller, if you're 6 foot, you're going to just notice that little bit where it kind of comes down a little bit, and kind of impinges a little bit, sorry, impedes in a little bit into your headspace. So see, if you're taller than me, and I'm 5'8", then you'll probably notice it if you've got the panoramic roof option fitted. The seats is exactly the same. There's a little bit of a struggle, depending where the driver's seat is, if you want to get your feet underneath it. And despite the dedicated platform that the two cars come on, it does feel like the floor's pushed up a little bit. It could have done with the rear seat being raised, but then of course you'd struggle with the headroom. So you do feel that your legs are being pushed up a bit. Again, depending obviously on the test specification of the Subaru you go for, this is the Touring. There's 2 specs available, limited in Touring. Touring has heated rear seats as well, so you've got a couple of buttons extra there for the rear seats. Connectivity is provided by 2 USB-C charging ports there, and storage is much like we had in the Toyota as well. So you've got the decent sized kind of elasticated mat pockets in the backs of the front seats, nice size kind of door bins for water bottles, although not much else. And then a flip down armrest as well for your 2 cup holders, and then a little kind of trough there for putting mobiles in, or maybe a tablet if your kids were watching that or whatever. Again, no load through facility, which would have been a nice kind of handier thing to have. But as I say, it's pretty decent back here in terms of overall space, and if it's just children that you're carrying around, then they're not going to have real problems at all. In fact, even adults, unless they're really tall, they're not going to feel like they're pinched for space back here. 2 ISOFIX points, which are quite nice and easy to get to as well, so one on either side of the rear seat. They're nice and easy to get to as well, so if it is kids you've got in, you can get the seats in and out, and the doors open. That's sort of like a reasonable width, and there's a reasonable kind of aperture there to get them in and out of. So on the whole, a bit like the boot space, kind of middle of the class. Not the biggest, certainly not the smallest. Now up front, it is pretty much identical to the Toyota. If it didn't have the badge on it, you'd think you climbed into the BZ4X by mistake. Now, if you haven't seen the Toyota review that I did last week, I will pop a link up there, because I'm not going to go into too much detail of the cabin because it is pretty much identical to that. I'll skip over a few bits, but I have done a very detailed review of the Toyota's interior, which is all but identical to this, bar the badge in the middle there. But it's worth talking about maybe the different specifications that you'll get, because the Toyota comes in 4 specs from memory. So you get the lead-in pure model, which only gets an 8-inch infotainment screen, and then you move up to the Motion, and then the Vision, which was our test car that we had, and then the Premier Edition, which is the top of the range. This is somewhere in terms of its spec between, I think, the Vision and the Premier Edition, because they say you get the standard panoramic glass sunroof in the Subaru, which you don't get in the Toyota, I think, till you get to the Premier Edition. But you don't get ventilated seats in this, which you do in the Vision model of the Toyota, if that makes sense. So there are specification differences. So you are going to have to just, maybe if you are looking at the two cars, just sit with a cup of tea and just go through the different specs and make sure, don't assume that one will have what the other one has just because it's the top of the range Subaru. It won't necessarily have what you get in the similar Toyota. So do check. Yeah, so the infotainment screen is this 12.3-inch display. It's all right. It's quite kind of quick to respond. You do get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. The only thing is, when you go back to if you're using the standard infotainment rather than CarPlay, that's your choice there. So there's nothing there. there's nothing on the screen, just web browser and notification, which I don't even know what that is. Yeah, how odd. Okay, I'll press that, and then web browser, you can no Wi-Fi connection. Yeah, okay, let's turn on the Wi-Fi. Let's see what it does. Disconnection needed. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, that's what you've got. You obviously have DAB radio and Bluetooth streaming, and as I say, you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can go in and obviously have a look at your efficiency, your trip information in there, and obviously we talk about that in usability section. But you can see certainly bits and pieces in there of your charts, what it's been using, your average speed, your range and your efficiency in there. And then obviously you get things like Bluetooth, audio equipment, and as I say, you get a standard embedded sat-nav, which you don't in the base model Toyota BZ4X. In the pure edition of that, you don't get the embedded sat-nav. You do in the other BZ4X, and you do get it as standard across both Solterras. The buttons below are the same, but as I say, you lack the ventilated seats that we had in the Vision specification of the Toyota. But you've got, although they're touch sensitive, they are physical heating and ventilation controls, and you do get the little beep when you press them, which is quite nice. So they're nice and easy to use. That you can get them within easy reach, and as I say, they're dead simple to use. Heated steering wheel and heated seats are standard on this car, which is nice, quite handy to use as well. Sorry, handy to have as well, I should say. And you do get them across the touring version of the Solterra. You also get this synthetic leather, which I really don't like, I have to say. It feels cheap. I don't like it. It's, you know, it's wiped clean, I suppose. That's the practicality side of it. So from the point of view, if you've got your dog in the back or your kids and they've got muddy prints, it can wipe nice and easily clean, but it doesn't feel particularly plush in here. The only sort of like any way that the cabin has any sort of form of lift to it, if you like, is this recycled material that's up on the dashboard like it was in the Toyota. I kind of just wish that they'd maybe used that on the seats as well, or you had some kind of maybe Alcantara style of material, or even some of that new you know, that new sort of like recycled cloth that people like the Stellantis group are using across some of their cars as well. That would have been that sequel material, just something a bit different would have been nice to see in here. And also different colours, because this is what you get. It's just a sea of grey in here, and this shiny piano black plastic veneer, which I'm just so over now. Because it just shows up every little bit of fingerprint, and I can see scratches on it now. We're obviously in the press car. I mean, this is done just shy of 2,000 miles, and obviously people have been wiping it clean, and you can just see it's now starting to get scratched. I'm kind of over it now. Just let's do something different. Wireless charging, yep, that's in there for your mobile, and it's got the nice kind of little kind of windows on the side so you can see your phone when it's in there. You also get USB connections underneath this floating console because, again, like Toyota, there's no glove box, so there is storage underneath here for keeping things like your handbooks, which are huge. That's like the Encyclopedia Britannica in there. I don't know why you need a handbook that sort of size, but there you go. That goes in there, if it'll fit. Yeah, let's see. It came out, so it'll go back in. Job done. Right, moving back. Cup holders, yeah, of course. Big coffee flask, decent water bottle goes in there. Oh, he says he can't get it back in. Oh, never mind. Let's try it again. There we go. And this lifts up. Storage bin in there, or it can slide forward if you've not got anything in there to cover that up, which is nice. Buttons here in front of the gear selector, so you've got this twisting dial which you've got to push down and twist to go into your gear selection, into reverse, push for it. That's the other thing, bongs at you forever, this car. I've just put it in reverse and it's bonging at me, and it will continue to do that while in reverse. I know I'm in reverse, I put it in reverse and I've got the reverse symbol there. Why do I need it to bong at me? I know that. No other car really does that. Stop it. Anyway, what else have we got here? Yeah, so, interestingly, with the Toyota, hang on, let me turn the aircon off. Interestingly, with the Toyota, you don't get different drive modes. You do in the Solterra, and they're here, the drive modes. And there's a button here that goes through, so you either have power, eco, or standard. And I'll go on to that when we drive the car. Then you've got this X mode again, where you've got this whole proper off-road suite of modes that you can go into depending on the surface you're on. So deep snow, mud, dirt, gravel, and then it'll obviously distribute the torque differently and the power differently to handle it. So it is quite a more leaning towards the sort of like the off-road SUV style rather than the more on-road urban style of crossovers that seem to dominate this class. So that is one thing I do like about it. Other buttons, things like traction control, the 360-degree camera that you get as well to park the car, that's quite nice and handy. Electronic park brake and the brake regen button, which again you do get the button on the Toyota, but on the Subaru you get paddles, so there's more adjustability on the brakes on the Subaru, which is nice. And then you've got your auto hold function. Driving position is exactly the same, so this slightly weird position where this binnacle is up high, so it's almost like a head-up display and you're looking down into it. Now Toyota are going to offer the BZ4X with that weird yoke style steering system. I don't know if Subaru are going to do it or not. But you just have to bear in mind that if you are in the Solterra, you'd like the Toyota, you've got to have the steering wheel just that little bit lower than maybe you would ideally like, so you get a clear view into the instrument panel. It doesn't take too long to get used to it, in fairness. I've been driving both the cars quite a while now, and actually I'm kind of used to it now, and I don't really kind of mind the kind of lower steering wheel. I've gotten used to it, so I'm okay with it now. What I don't like, and again I said it in the Toyota review, is the actual steering wheel. Yes, it's round, yes, it's okay to hold in terms of its thickness and its girth, but just looking at it is just a bit, I don't know, it just looks a bit, it just looks a bit odd. I don't think it's particularly nice design, you know. The buttons they're all right, you know, there's enough of them, they work okay, but yeah, turned the radio on. Turn that off. There we go. Cruise control on that side there. Bluetooth and audio, as you heard over there as well. And then on this side, you've just got your door controls, mirror up there, windows down there, and memory seat positions up there. Now again, different specification on the touring spec of the Solterra. You get power seat adjustment on driver and passenger with the memory. On the Vision model of the BZ4X we had, which was of a similar price to this, you only get power adjustment on the driver's side. You also get a fairly decent Harman Kardon audio system as standard on the touring specification of the Solterra, so that's quite good as well. I have to admit, I do quite like that. So again, like we said last week, on the whole, there's bits of it I like. I like the design of it. I don't mind the design of it. I quite like this sort of like high binnacle where you can look quite far down into it. There's enough information on it. I would like the percentage figure of the battery rather than just the miles to empty. Having a percentage would be handy too. The 12.3 inch screen is nice, it's clear, it's up in your line of sight, it's relatively easy to use. I like the fact it's got physical ventilation controls, and the buttons round about the gear selector bit is really nice, and this high console has enough storage in it. I don't like the materials that they've used. Again, like the Toyota, it feels really well built. It does feel like it will go on forever, but I just wish they had used better materials in it, because it just feels really drab, and it just feels like a sea of grey in here, and just some of the plastics, they just don't feel nice. It's not that they're not built well, they just don't feel particularly nice, that's all. And I just wish they'd used a bit more of an imagination with the interior of the car. But on the whole, as I say, it's okay. It's a bit like everything else. It's certainly not the worst car in its class, but it's nowhere near the best either. Now, styling differences, there are some. You can tell the cars apart. From some angles, I should say, like in side profile, it's harder, but from the front, that's probably the biggest change. And if I'm being truthful about it, I prefer the Subaru, if I'm honest with you. I like both cars. I like the Toyota as well, but I prefer the Subaru. I think they've got a slightly better resolved solution when it comes to the styling of the car. Now, obviously, it doesn't need a grille, and they haven't tried to put one on, but I just like the fact it's got this kind of framed element round the front here. The Toyota didn't have that. It just had this plastic strip across there, and then just a sea of nothing. I quite like that, just that styling feature of the Solterra. I think it's a lot better. Obviously, down bottom, you've got the cooling that goes through there. You've got some nice plastic kind of skid plates there, because again, like the Toyota, they're really pushing the kind of off-road angle of this car, as they should with Subaru, in fairness. And again, it quotes departure and approach angles in the specification sheet, which I like as well. The bit that I really like around the front, however, is the better design of the lights. The Toyota had those weird kind of plastic eyebrows on them, which just didn't look right. They looked like a bad panel gap, and like somebody'd stuck them on. You know those cars that some people stick those weird things on to make the lights look angry? That's what the Toyota looked like. This doesn't. This is a much better styling execution in my view, where you get the nice, all bigger kind of sort of like the wrap round kind of headlights there. I much prefer the look of the Solterra. Nice daytime running light there, and then of course your main beam lights through there, and then your fogs, front fogs down at the bottom. Get a little camera embedded in there, and then obviously your parking sensors around the front. Again, like the Toyota, there's nothing underneath here to see. There's no luggage storage space up front. Maybe a missed opportunity again, being the fact that it is a dedicated EV platform and not a converted one. And then you get this gloss black panel here, which is mirrored with the gloss black roof rails and the gloss black mirrors here. So again, from the front, much better style. And as you move around the side, of course, you see this kind of grey cladding that you get on the side. And again, I like it. It's practical. You're out in the countryside, you're going down some narrow lanes with sort of like thorny hedges down either side. That's taking the brunt of it, and not your paintwork. So well done, Subaru and Toyota, for that. I do like that. There's a vent that comes in here just to aid the airflow over the wheels as well, which is quite nice. But again, why have we got this silly EV badge on it? Now, the charging flap's on the other side, so it's on the near side, but then it's got one of these as well. Don't like that. That'd be coming off if it was my car, if I'm being honest with you. Now, wheels and tyres. So again, specifications, two, remember. Your lead-in limited, and then the touring specification. The limited gets 18-inch wheels as standard, and the touring gets these 20-inch wheels as standard. Nice, quite nice kind of duotone alloys. And interestingly enough, the Subaru comes on Dunlop tyres, whereas the Toyota's on Bridgestones. Now, in my experience, Bridgestones give a nice balance between on-road, dry weather and wet weather grip. These Dunlops have been pretty decent though. I mean, it's not been wet while I've had the car, in fairness. But again, there's a good grip level from these Dunlops. So maybe a little bit of a test maybe later to see how well it copes with a little bit off the beaten path. Let's have a look and see. But anyway, yeah, so you get Dunlops SP Sport Maxes on the 20-inch wheels on the Solterra. A couple of little cameras down in there, obviously, that you do, so you can give you a surround sound camera view, and then again, practical side sill, the big plastic cladding of the side sill. I really like the design of the cars. I like this kind of crease that comes into the door here and runs along, and there's another one there. It's interesting without being fussy. And I like it. I must admit, the car's overall design, whether it's the Toyota or the Subaru, I really do like, and I think it's one of the more distinctive looking cars in the class, if I'm honest with you. Gloss black roof rails, as I say, just for that added practicality of bike racks or roof boxes if you're going on holiday with it, as well. And then of course you come to the rear and you've got the big plastic wheel arch extension around the back as well, leading into a similar rear end to the Toyota. So yeah, at the rear it's pretty much identical, but the light graphic isn't quite as distinctive as the Toyota. I quite like the Toyota's kind of 1980s kind of grid pattern on that. I do like that. And it doesn't have the light bar all the way across. Nice kind of integrated spoiler just at the base of the screen here. Twin roof spoilers. I mentioned in the Toyota review it was a bit like the MG4 as well. The other car it's a bit like is the Volvo C40. It's got those kind of twin roof spoilers as well, which I quite like. But of course, the big bugbear, no rear wiper, and I don't care what you say, you do need it, but we're going to leave it at that. Big Subaru badge there, cameras up in there, camera there, Subaru badging down the side, proper big plastic bumper at the back. Okay, what do you think, folks? Let me know in the comments down below. Better than the Toyota? Because I think it is, I must admit. I do prefer the look of the Subaru over the Toyota, but what do you think? And do you think it is a good looking car at all? As always, the comments down below are just waiting for you. Now, same battery as the Toyota, so this 71 kilowatt hour, which is the total capacity. Its usable capacity is slightly less than that, and somewhere in the 60s, which isn't particularly great in this class, if I'm honest with you. Now, this is something that I've noticed with when I've had these two cars, both from looking at other journalists who have had them, that I've talked to on Twitter, and people that I know who have driven the cars and their experiences with it, and from some of the comments that we had from the Toyota road test review that we did last week. It isn't good enough, if I'm honest with you. Now, because you only get the Subaru with all-wheel drive, a dual motor setup, then there's only two quoted mileages for the WLTP figures, because obviously it will depend on whether you've got 18-inch wheels or the 20-inch wheels of this one, the touring specification. So the limited on the 18-inch wheels gives a WLTP figure of 289 miles, and the 20-inch wheel specified touring, like this one, is 257 miles. Now, the efficiency I've been getting from both cars has been different. The Subaru has been slightly better, but it's nowhere near what it should be. And for the price of car that we're talking about here, for there not to be a 300 mile range car in the range or capable of that is really disappointing. And I'm labouring the point while I'm stood next to the Subaru, and I apologise to Subaru for that a little bit, because it is Toyota that have provided the batteries for the car and sort of like the electrical kind of gubbins that go along with that. And I find it really disappointing, given the fact that now for 20 years they've been given as battery, hybrids in terms of the Prius, and then with Lexus, obviously they're hybrids as well. But Toyota have been in the past quite anti-EV in some ways. But even so, the tail doesn't wag the dog. The rest of the industry is moving to that, and whilst I don't disagree with them that there may still be a place in this world for hybrids and internal combustion engines within certain areas, electric cars shouldn't be as poor as this, in my opinion, and this is the one area where it really lets these two cars down. And I feel for Subaru that obviously they're kind of lumbered with what Toyota have done in some respects, but nonetheless it is there and it's there for all to see. It's not as efficient as it should be, and it doesn't give the range that certainly a lot of its major rivals, certainly at this price point, give. There's a lot less, there's a lot of cars way below this price point are much better than these cars, so they really need to work on that. Anyway, enough of me sort of preaching. Now, charging it obviously comes from this side here. So near side, front wing, you get charging port. CCS charging is standard, as you'd expect, and it will take charging speeds up to 150 kilowatts, so bang in the middle of the class. Now that means you can go from a 10 to 80% charge in round about 30 minutes. Again, the charging curve It's not brilliant, and I've had different experiences with the cars this week, but I think that's something that may be able to be resolved with a software update, because obviously you can get software updates. I'm sure they will come through, and that's something again that Toyota need to practice on. Charging the car up from your home 7 kilowatt wall box, so you're going from a 0% to 100%, you're looking at probably around about 11 hours from your 7 kilowatt wall box to go from flat to full. And like the Toyota, you do get the heat pump as standard. So, does the Solterra drive any differently to the Toyota? Yeah, it does a little bit, not massively. But a bit like the styling, you can notice little differences. Now, as I said, you only get the one motor version with the Subaru, which is the dual motor one. So the power output is the 215 brake horsepower that you get with the dual motor Toyota. And again, 0 to 60 time is the same. It's 6.9 seconds, which is plenty fast enough. I'm not going to sit here and say you need anything quicker than that. And to all intents and purposes, like I said when we were doing the interior section, if you were just sitting here and you taped up that Subaru badge, you'd think, oh, I'm just driving a Toyota. But then some little differences kind of creep in. You've got paddles behind the steering wheel, which I didn't realise at first. And you can adjust the brake regen a little bit better than you can a Toyota. All they've done is, so where you've got the one pedal drive button, like you had in the BZ4X. Well, you've got that there again, and it's, well, I say one pedal drive, it's not really one pedal driving. It will draw the car up to a creep, but then you've got to use the brake if you actually want to stop the car. What the paddles behind the steering wheel do is they give you varying degrees from standard to that setting, if that makes sense. So you click on the paddles and it gives you a small amount of regen, which you can then dial back off to give you that coast if you want. So there's just a bit more of adjustment available with the brakes in the Solterra than you get with the BZ4X. The other thing that you get with the car as well is different driving modes, which you didn't get in the Toyota. So the drive mode button, which is down here, if I press it now, I'm in the power mode. So I've gone from standard to power. But if I'm absolutely honest with you, that was my tripod, just clunking in the boot. If I'm absolutely honest with you, I'm struggling to tell the difference between standard and power. That's imperceptible difference, if I'm being honest with you. I kind of don't understand why I've done it. I think they've done it because people maybe expect to see it and expect to have it, but you don't really need it, if I'm honest with you. You can go. You've got the eco mode like you've got with the Toyota as well, so that's there if you want to just eke everything, live your last little bit of mileage out of the car. You've got that. So that's the sort of like the main differences within the drive interface, if you like. The two things that you'll see different is an extra button and these paddles, which in fairness I quite like. I like that little bit of adjustability of brake regen depending where you are, and I think if you've had it on another EV and you're looking at these cars, then you'll feel nice and fuzzy that you've got it on the Solterra over the Toyota. In terms of its ride quality, in terms of its refinement, and in terms of its handling, it's pretty much as is as we reviewed in the BZ4X. The steering is a touch vague. It's not ideal. I'd like something a little bit sharper. It's not heavy, it's not too light. It just doesn't feel particularly pointy. As I said in the last review, there seems to be more movement in the wheel than you actually get in the movement in the car in front. Now, it's an electric power steering setup, same again as you get in the BZ4X, but it offers the rack and pinion setting. I'm not sure if Subaru are going to offer that silly yoke style with the full drive steer-by-wire system that Toyota are mooting. So I don't know if Subaru are going to do that or not. I kind of hope they don't, because I'd have to drive it to be absolutely convinced about that a steer-by-wire system is a good thing. I like to have a bit more connection to the road than wires. I like mechanical racks. That's what I like, oily things. So that's, yeah, so you've still got this kind of vague steering, but you've still got a relatively refined cabin. The noise intrusion from outside isn't particularly forthcoming. There's no more noise than you'd expect out of the car, and generally speaking, it's quite nice. It rides well on the 20-inch wheels as well. It'd be nice to drive one on 18s to see if there is a perceptible difference, but certainly if you went for ones with the 20-inch wheels, I don't think you're going to be actually really that disappointed. It's okay. It's certainly not what you'd call uncomfortable. It's way better than a Tesla Model Y, for instance. It's a lot more supple than that. The brakes themselves are pretty okay. They're pretty good. I like them. They've got a nice kind of feel to the pedal, so when you're actually using the pedal, it feels like it does. Some cars, obviously majority of EVs, when you use the pedal, it uses it uses regeneration from the motor first, and then the pads bite on the disc. And on some cars, especially the Stellantis cars, you can feel it. They've got a real wooden feel to them. This isn't like that. This is really nice. It actually feels like you're always using the pads and the discs all the time. It's got a real nice kind of hydraulic feel to the pedal, and I really like that. So that's good. That's a good thing. What else is there to say? Well, the handling's all right. The handling's okay. Again, it's not a car you're going to be throwing down, you know, sort of like an alpine mountain pass, you know, chasing 911s and, you know, sort of like 296 Ferraris. It's all right. It's fine for a family EV. It's okay, but it's not as dynamically sharp as something like an EV6 Kia. Nowhere near it in that sense. You know, if you want a dynamic drive, then, you know, the EV6 is your man for that. But as I say, I think where Subaru and subsequently Toyota as well have come from with these cars is trying to appeal to the road customers. And as I said last week, if you're coming from I don't know, a Forester or an Outback or whatever, you know, that Subaru make, and you think, I think I'm going to try an electric car now and I want to stick with Subaru, this isn't going to scare you. You know, it's got all the bits that you will expect to have from Subaru, and it drives like you expect from Subaru, except you don't have a nice warbly flat 4 turbo engine up in front of you. But, you know, the rest of it is good, and it drives well, and it's nice, and it's comfortable. The driving position, once you get used to that kind of slightly lower wheel position, is okay. The seats, I didn't really mention the seats in the Toyota review. I'll mention them here because they're the same. They're okay. They're absolutely fine. They hold you in the right places. There's enough length on the squab. Certainly for me, I don't feel the lack of adjustment on the squab is needed. Is missing. It's fine. I'm okay with that. There's just enough side support for when you do want to get a little bit of a hustle on. You don't feel like you're kind of falling out of the seat like I do when I'm driving one of the Teslas. Their seats always just seem a bit flat to me, and the back and the squab and the shiny kind of leather pleather that they've got. I always feel like I'm kind of sliding around on a Tesla. I don't in this. It's fine. I don't like the material, the kind of vinyl like leather. I don't like that. But otherwise, I can't really fault. You know, in terms of the driving position, once you're used to it and where the seat is, it's okay. I quite like it. You get good visibility out of the car. Again, like most cars, there's a wee bit lacking in the sort of like over the shoulder because of the thicker C-pillar, but you get nice big door mirrors. You get blind spot assist. I should maybe talk about the safety systems. You get blind spot assist, and you get a host of stuff with both the cars, which you can adjust up on the dashboard here. So if I go through it, I get, where have we got it? Did I get the right place? What have we got? Lane departure assist, blind spot monitoring, pre-collision safety things. So you know it's going to, if you're coming up to the car and it's stopped and you haven't noticed it, it'll you get parking assist, and then you get sort of the rear cross traffic alert as well. So there's enough safety systems on the car that you would expect to find on it. So that's all good too. So kudos to them for having all of that. So yeah, you know, it's all right. You know, there's a little bit of a difference, as I say, to the Toyota. I can feel there's a little bit of a suppleness to the Subaru that wasn't quite there in the Toyota. Not that it was a hard-edged car or anything, or it was uncomfortable. I suspect The tyres have a lot to do with it. I suspect the fact this is on Dunlops rather than the Bridgestones, it feels like there's a tiny bit more grip in the car as well, and that's it. But the big bugbear that I'm going to have is this efficiency. You know, now it's better than the Toyota was. Sorry, I'm just going back to the screen where I can look at my efficiencies because I set them this morning. So when I had the Toyota on test, I was averaging 2.3, 2.2, 2.3. I think I got up to about 2.4 miles per kilowatt hour. The Solterra is telling me I've done 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour, and I've done exactly the same drive today, which is interesting. But again, it's showing a miles to empty range of 97 miles. If I flick the aircon on, it drops it to 75 miles. So it's not as bad as the Toyota was, but it's still not good, because I don't really want to not have my aircon on. So there you go. So yeah, like I said, everything about the car is that kind of middle of the road. It's all right. There's no standout thing of the car on road for me. It's where it's off road, I think, is where Subaru have excelled with it, and obviously now Toyota by default from that. You know, with this sort of the Subaru all-wheel drive system, you know, good departure angles, good approach angles, wading ability, and ground clearance. So again, if you're out in the countryside and you live down a farm track where you've got that kind of rutted road, you know, with a kind of hump in the centre where it's just worn away at the sides, this is your car. It's taller than, in terms of ground clearance, it's a bit taller than the Nissan Ariya, and I think the Ariya was excellent. It felt like a proper big SUV. This is a similar type of feel to it, but the actual ground clearance itself is better in the Toyota and the Subaru than you get in the Ariya. So that's maybe going to be a consideration for you depending where you live. Who knows? Now, your entry point price-wise into the Subaru is a little bit higher than it is in the Toyota, but do bear in mind that it only comes with all-wheel drive as standard, so they don't do an equivalent single motor variant like Toyota do with the BZ4X. So basically there's two trim levels that you get. So both are dual motor, both the same battery, and you just pick the trim level that you want. And you start with the Limited at $49,995, and then you move into the Touring, which this one is at $52,995. The only option fitted to this particular car, which is really the only option that you can get in terms of factory options, is the metallic paint, which brings the price of this car up to £53,500. So again, it's kind of smack in the middle of this sort of like sector of the market. So between the 45 to the £55,000 bracket, where most of these cars fall into, is where you're going to find the Subaru, as well as the dual motor versions of the Toyota. Now, Toyota and Subaru share the same servicing intervals, which is 10,000 miles or every year. The downside is, however, with the Subaru, you don't get that sort of like after sales package, that warranty that you can extend year on year like you can with the Toyota. So you are stuck with just a 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty on the Subaru. The only maybe added bonus that I could give other than that is, in terms of reliability, Subaru and Toyota, you know, pretty much are kings of reliability. So fingers crossed, you might not need to call upon those warranties very often. And when it comes to competition, well, where do we start? Okay, so you've got the BZ4X, which you could also consider as well. Hyundai Ioniq 5, Kia EV6, BMW iX1, Mercedes EQA. What else have we got? Volkswagen ID4, ID5, Skoda Enyaq Coupe, Audi Q4 e-tron, Audi Q4 e-tron Sportback, Volvo XC40 and C40, Ford with the Mustang Mach-E, and standard range and extended range guys, Tesla Model Y, Genesis GV60. There's just, I mean, the world is your oyster. It really is. This is such a dominant marketplace at the moment, and this is the problem with these cars. You can't afford to be anything less than great in this market space. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Subaru Solterra. We like its styling. We like the interior design. It does actually drive quite well. It's a simple range and it's well equipped as standard, and it has good off-road dynamics. We don't like the choice of the materials on the interior and the colours available let it down. The steering is a little vague like the Toyotas, and again, like its cousin from Toyota, its range is poor and the efficiency is woeful. I've got a bit of a confession to make. You see, we were supposed to drive the Toyota BZ4X last year in 2022, but the wheels literally fell off. There are problem with wheel hubs, as I alluded to in last week's road test review, and all press demos were cancelled. The cars weren't allowed to go anywhere until Toyota had got to the bottom of it, and that included Subaru as well. But I kept in touch with Toyota and Subaru as well, and obviously wanted to get the cars in as soon as possible to get them reviewed. And they both offered me cars on exactly the same week this year. So I've actually had both the cars this week together. And it gave me a bit of a battle, if I'm honest with you, with how to film these reviews. Did I do them as separate reviews, or did I get both the cars together and just say, look, that's what the Toyota's good at, that's what the Subaru's good at, you make your mind up type of thing. But I felt, if I'm honest with you, that was doing a little bit of a disservice to Subaru. Now, I've always liked Subaru. To me, they're the kind of Japanese Citroen. They've never really followed by the rules. They've always done things their own way, and I really like that when a car company does that. You know, during the 80s, when everyone was kind of chasing hot hatchbacks, they were doing the kind of turbocharged L-series estate cars. And I thought they were really good. I say they did the Brat pickup, which I thought was a really cool car. And then obviously through the sort of like the Impreza Turbo years, you know, it was a booted saloon, and the estate one was a bit quirky. And then when everyone was doing kind of curvy coupes, they did a thing called the XT coupe, which was just basically drawn with a ruler, no curves in it whatsoever. It looked really different and really bold. And then they did the SVX, which was just like unlike any other kind of, it looked like a spaceship. And you know, they've championed boxer engines, even boxer versions of the diesel and such like. So I've always thought they're a bit of a forgotten brand, and in some ways they're like sort of like the automotive equivalent of a Barber jacket. You know, it can get tattered and tired, but you know, all you need to do is just basically kind of re-wax it and it'll last forever. And that's what I've always liked about Subaru. However, having both the cars together has made me realise that I can't give any different verdict to the Solterra than I did to the BZ4X. In this marketplace, it simply isn't good enough. There's so much good talent out there that's, dare I suggest, a little bit more worthy of your cash than either of these two cars are. There's too much disappointment in them in terms of efficiency and range for me to stand here and say that you should choose this over something else. Now, let me add a little caveat to that, however. A little bit like I said last week in a Toyota review, if you are coming from a Subaru, if you've got a Forester at the moment and you've built up a good relationship with your local dealer, for instance, and you want to go electric, well, now you don't have to leave them. And don't get me wrong, it is a good car in a lot of respects. You know, its on-road dynamics are actually pretty decent, its off-road dynamics are superb. In fact, the bits that let the Solterra down are the bits that actually Subaru haven't had anything to do with. They're the bits that Toyota have done. So in some respects, I kind of forgive Subaru a little bit, and kind of can say to you a little bit more, they're a bit more worthy of it in my respect, in my view. Gun to my head, if you said you had to choose between the two of them, if you take away the sort of like the warranty side from Toyota, because they do offer that 10-year warranty, if you're only keeping the car for say 3 or 4 years, I'd buy the Subaru if I'm honest with you, because I think it looks better. I think it gives better value for money within its range. I think there's a better value for money package in here that you get with this, especially this model, the Touring one. I really like this one. And I just want to support them. I think they're a brand that needs a little bit of support and needs a little bit of a G-up. So welcome Subaru, welcome to the EV game. It's nice to have you here. But next time, choose a better partner, because it's good, but it's just not good enough. Thank you once again for watching AutoEV. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel as always, and make sure then you press the bell button that's down below, because then you're going to be notified of when the next video goes live. Also as well, thank you ever so much for putting up with the man who's mowing the cricket pitch just in front of me with the big tractor. Thank you, sir. Lovely to have you here. Remember, your comments, they're really important to us, so make sure you do leave us some comments. Do you have one on order? Have you bought one? Let us know what your findings are with it. Let me know what kind of efficiency you're getting from it. And also, if you've bought a car on the strength of one of the reviews that we've done, let us know, because it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy inside when you tell us that we've had a hand in you choosing your next EV. We're across all social media as well, so that's important to remember too. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Oh, and we're on TikTok now as well. We're down with the kids. Yay. I don't know how it works. But give us a follow there, because that helps us too. And if this has just whetted your appetite and you're wondering, you're new to the channel, you're wondering what we're all about, then stick on the channel, stick on the YouTube channel, because there's 130 odd videos now, and they include road test review, twin tests, used car reviews, electric icons, van reviews, and even electric motorbikes from my good friend Charlie Berman. So all that remains for me to say is, once again, thank you for watching, thank you for supporting the channel. I'll see you again soon, with a different car, I promise.